So this is a true story, and it actually happened to my mom. Now it may seem unbelievable, but it really did happen. So my mom had a loving relationship with her grandma and loved to visit her as a child until her unfortunate passing. However, strange things happened to her when she used to visit her house, as well as her grandma. In one instance, they were gardening together when footprints appeared in the freshly sowed soil. Another time, the toaster was painted all of a sudden, and she and her grandma had to chisel it all off. Other times, the cat would stare off into seemingly nowhere and follow something and then suddenly leave. Another time, there was vacuuming in the neighbor's house while the neighbors were gone, and when they went to investigate, nothing was there. And once, there was a knife stuck into the side of the doorway. Now all of this seems really strange to me, and I half believed it until now. My mom's aunt moved into this house after my mom's grandma had passed. Then my aunt unfortunately passed away recently as well. So my mom was there helping her uncle sell stuff at a garage sale. She just called while on her way home and told me this. While selling some stuff, she suddenly saw this white rocking chair. There was a small boy about 10 years old rocking in this chair very hard. He had brown hair. So my mom walked by and said something like, "Having fun in that rocking chair?" To which he looked at her very angrily and then replied, "It's haunted." My mom laughed and said, "Really? How do you know?" And he said, "It's haunted. I can feel it." He then walked off, and my mom couldn't find him. It was as if he disappeared. She asked one of the other people helping if they saw the boy, and they said no, which was a reasonable response since there was a lot of people there. She then asked where the white rocking chair was from, and they replied, "What chair?" The other two people who stayed in that house also said weird things were happening all night. I'm sorry, but what chair? Heck no. This is horror movie material. All I'm saying is that I do not care how much family history we have in this house. I will never be visiting this house ever again. Nope, with the capital nope. I was born a twin, but my twin sister died at birth. So did all 6 children my parents had after me. Those died pretty early into the pregnancy, so it was only miscarriages. My twin was the only one who took a few breaths before passing. I'm the only one who survived and grew up to be the adult I am today. I've only lived in one house during my entire lifetime until recently, when I eventually finally got to move out. There's a good reason for that. I learned about my siblings, especially my twin sister, when I was 14 years old. But when I was a first grader, I would wholeheartedly believe I wasn't an only child and tell my teachers and the other children about my sister I was playing and sharing a room with. Of course, I don't actually have memories of this because no one was there, but I didn't lie for attention. I genuinely believed that. I had a fair share of trauma and mental illnesses in my life already, so when I started to hallucinate disfigured shadows and children in my house at age 12, I went to see a therapist, and it was deemed a symptom of my PTSD. The shadows would form a kind of uncanny form of a young girl most of the time. Until recently, I just considered those hallucinations side effects of my admittedly fragile mental state, since the encounters really scared me. Sometimes it even felt like it would talk to me in a weird, unfriendly way. On the staircase to my room and around the dinner table where those things appeared, I felt watched or even chased, especially at night. Sometimes when I'm awake late, I hear footsteps up the stairs to my room, but they stop just in front of the last step. They don't go back down, but seem to start from the bottom up again a few minutes later. So far, it's plausible I'm mentally ill. This changed when I got together with my boyfriend. He started sleeping over and spending more time at the house naturally, and I never told him about my scary encounters. So when we were still up at night and the footsteps occurred, which I learned to ignore quite well, and he looked up from his phone screen, clearly alerted, my stomach dropped. He's a skeptic, so after he mentioned how the sounds were weird, he quickly got his mind off of it. A few weeks later, my boyfriend went to the bathroom at night. In the morning, he told me how weird he felt walking up the stairs. He felt like something was watching and chasing him. I never told him about how I always feel this exact thing when I walk up those stairs. Those occurrences with him started piling up until I got genuinely terrified of staying longer than necessary at this godforsaken house. Right after I turned 18 earlier this year, I started working my hardest to afford to move out, and I finally did last week. So far, I haven't had scary encounters in my new home. Something is telling me it was her. Since I was a child, she's been tormenting me. The way my skeptic boyfriend experienced it the exact same way without knowing convinced me I'm not crazy. When I was 19 years old, I was fresh out of high school and had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do with my life. For some reason, I thought it would be a good idea to go to school to become an EMT, even though I have a weak stomach and wasn't even sure that I wanted to work in the medical field. Hitting the books, training, and testing wasn't even difficult. It was basic information that would help keep someone alive long enough to get them to the emergency room, and that's really about it. The thing about EMT school, and just about any type of medical training, is that you're required to do clinicals. For us, we had to do 7 ride-along shifts that were 12 hours each and 2 ER shifts that were 12 hours. Most of my clinical shifts weren't major: broken toes, elderly falls, and maybe 1 or 2 actual life-threatening situations. I thought it was bad enough when we transported a guy who nearly sawed off his own ring finger while working, but my very last clinical shift gave me nightmares for weeks and made me decide I never wanted to work in the medical field. That night, I chose to do a shift in an emergency room in East Texas. From 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., I'd be basically following nurses around, doing random things such as grabbing them needles, syringes, etc. Around 9 p.m., the emergency room got completely hectic and looked just like an episode out of an ER TV show. There was shouting coming from the electronic doors that led out to the ambulance bay. Next thing I know, I'm being told to stay put while 4 EMTs quickly rolled in a man strapped to a gurney, his skin completely burned over 80% of his body. Most of the time, I was told to keep out of the way, but I witnessed everything. His name was Michael, and he was about 30 years old. He was severely burned head to toe. The nurses and trauma doctors worked quickly to try and save his life. The weird thing was, whenever his stomach was pumped, it was filled with straight gasoline. Another thing is that normally when someone catches on fire, the fabric from their clothes basically melts into their skin. There was no fabric, nothing had melted to him, which essentially means that he had been naked at the time he had caught on fire. The doctors pumped him full of medication, placed him on a ventilator, performed emergency surgery, and so forth. The entire room was covered in blood, iodine, scalpels, needles, and so on. The floors had bloody shoe prints from everyone frantically moving around and walking through the blood. I can't even begin to describe the smell, but if you can imagine the smell of a burning corpse, that would be it. Once the doctors said there was nothing more they could do, the family was brought in. The mother of this gentleman stated that she knew it was suicide. He had previously been hospitalized several times due to mental illness. The only thing we could conclude from there is that he took his clothes off, poured gasoline all over himself, drank it, and then set himself on fire. Once they officially pronounced Michael as dead, I was allowed to enter the room. I was required to put on gloves and a full medical bodysuit. After that, I was required to help lift the body up and position it in various angles while the crime scene photographer took photos and the coroner prepared to take the body to the morgue. His eyes were completely white, something that usually happens whenever someone fully passes away. Pieces of skin and blood covered my gloves and shoes. The medical bodysuit I was wearing was covered in it as well. After we were done, I ran into the nearest bathroom and hurled. This was honestly the most brutal way I've seen someone die. I barely slept, and when I did, I had constant nightmares about Michael. Suicide is tragic enough, but to go out in such a terrible way and suffer, I can't imagine.